Stewart, I was just watching and listening to your trailer on lessons from Cats for Surviving Fascism. And I apologize because I find it very hard to remember that title. I hope it doesn't affect sales. What is this book all about?
It's about learning lessons from cats about surviving fascism. It's kind of in the title. But no, it's basically, it started off as an idea I had as a bit of a writing exercise to be like, how can I think of something fun to write about? And also the world's falling apart. So how can I combine those two things? I thought, well, cats are jerks and cats are horrible. And they're probably like they're fluffy little resistance machines. And they don't do what they don't want to do. They can't be told what to do. You can't make them wear a cute outfit for too long without risking your life. So it sort of seemed like a nice connection. And the more I wrote it, what was really terrifying about the book, I know that this is early to jump into the conversation, but what's really terrifying and I guess good in a way about the book is that I wrote it as kind of like, isn't this funny? And the more I wrote it, I thought, this is actually probably pretty relevant.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking, because I think most people who know you, and we'll get into your history a little bit more for the people who don't, they would think of you as, of course, the internet's favorite dad. You're funny, you make silly videos online, you have a lot of humor. This feels like you've gone to a darker place.
Have you read the newspaper lately, Amber?
I try not to, but yes, I have.
That's probably a good idea. It is a very funny book. Like I will say, I'm not saying that I'm a super funny writer, but it's attempted to be a funny book as well, entertaining read. I'm a big believer in you can't just force serious messaging to people all the time. It's important to be serious sometimes, but you have to entertain, you have to offer some distraction, you have to offer some levity, I think, in order for your message to really sink in. Otherwise, there's enough serious, horrible things happening in people's lives. You don't need another dork like me saying, hey, listen, things are terrible. But if I say, hey, do you like cats? By the way, things are terrible. That's kind of the sneaky way to do it.
Well, I think that is a really good point, because when I was reading about the book, there was a line that made Chris and me laugh out loud. And that line is that the book is like On Tyranny, of course, the book by Tim Snyder, but with cats. So you are definitely having some fun with this.
It's it's weird and it's good. What's really funny is that the publisher is very keen to, and that's Grand Central Publishing and Hachette, are keen to make the connection to On Tyranny, and that idea that it comes across as like a silly book initially, but then the more you read it, as I said, the more you realize to yourself, well, maybe there's some actual information here. I was saying in a marketing meeting recently, they were showing me a mock-up of the page for the pre-sale on the publishing site, and I said, I don't know if I like the idea that in that section at the bottom of the page where it says, buyers of this may also like, that section of shopping pages.
Yeah, of course.
And it said buyers of this book may also like something like 50 best farts. And I was like, I don't think we're getting the gravity of this book at all. I mean, those are both funny ideas, but the cats and farting is funny. But it's more like Animal Farm, except not horrible and bleak.
Well, I have to say that the book is just out, and we certainly want people to buy the book. But I also want to talk a little bit about you, because we did a very brief introduction to some of your work, and I'm going to assume a lot of people know who you are. But for people who don't, instead of me introducing you, how would you introduce yourself at a party?
Social media darling, beloved by many, almost national treasure. But guy who makes videos on the internet. I've been doing that for 12 years now. I make videos on the internet, and I write books and essays and stuff like that. And it's basically a very successful attempt at not getting a real job. It's worked out so far.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah, exactly.
Although I'm not funny. I'm trying to work on that a little bit.
I disagree with that. I think you're very funny. I think you're underrated funny. I think people don't realize it about you, that you're actually quite funny.
Well, thank you. Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but back to you. I do want to say that as your friend and someone who has followed your work for a very long time, one of the things that I've loved about watching you is that you have grown in terms of your comedy and your work. You know, a lot of people try to do the same thing over and over again, but you have gone into places that maybe when I first met you, I wouldn't expect. Places like having political conversations, for example, sitting down with the Prime Minister of Canada. These would not be things that I would have imagined that were in your future. So that's kind of evolved. Why is that stuff important to you?
My takeaway from that lead up is basically that you looked at me and saw an idiot, and you were like, "Well, this guy's not very deep. He's about as deep as a puddle." And then you were surprised that I went down a couple extra inches, which was pretty good. Yeah, I think you know what it was. It was initially sort of realizing, being shocked that I had an audience in general when I started making content back in 2013, and going, "Wow, people are actually watching this stuff. This is really fun and really cool." And trying to figure out what that meant and what people wanted. And then once I developed a bit of a bigger platform, realizing, hey, I've got a bit of a bigger platform here now, and I should maybe, you know, expand my perspectives a little bit, expand my views a little bit, expand my reach a little bit by talking about stuff that's important in a way that it will hopefully resonate and hopefully relay good messaging. And I think, you know, pandemic was a really good example of that, where I would watch Dr. Tam's updates daily during the pandemic in Canada, and I'd be like, Dr. Tam is super smart. She is not very funny, and she's terrible at telling jokes. So I thought I could maybe do the same kind of messaging as her, except make it more entertaining, and it would maybe actually, you know, sink in for people. I think it's important. It's kind of, to me, it's like I often compare myself to Oprah.
Really?
All the time. Oh yeah.
Tell me more.
Well, you know, when Oprah started, she started her show in Chicago. And it was very much Jerry Springer-esque. It was very much scandalous and salacious and all that kind of stuff. And she really built up a platform. And then she became quite aware of her platform and decided to, you know, teach people, to inform people as much as possible. I don't want to go that far. I just want to kind of incidentally let some good stuff sink in and entertain mostly. But that idea being responsible to your platform.
Okay, so I have to ask you, because there is this temptation in the digital space to enrage people. And I would say that you have touched on subjects like vaccines, politics, that certainly would inspire people to either resort to anger or maybe support, who knows what. Do you think that in this age of the internet, you have to do that? Do you ever feel pressure to kind of go too far with that sentiment?
I mean, yeah, kind of. I mean, I think you're totally correct in that there's, you know, outrage is rewarded on social media. A really good example of that is I did a video in 2017 called Explaining Canada Day to Americans.
Canada Day?
Yeah, kind of like July 4th for you guys.
Yeah, but we do July 4th because we got lots of stuff to celebrate. We got Eagles and freedom and KFC. What do you have to celebrate?
Did you just say, what do we have to celebrate? And it was for a branded piece for KFC Canada. And that year it got something like 65 million views, and it gets about 3 million views, new views every year after that. And one of the reasons it keeps popping up is, first of all, it's very funny and very good.
Of course.
And then secondly, it's because people fight in the comments. They get all upset about things, and they sort of get angry at whatever I've said and someone else has said. And it's just a big fight in the comments. And I appreciate that because it turns into money. But I also hate it because it's terrible for society. So I think there's times when I'm creating content where I think to myself, well, I could do this and it's going to make somebody upset probably. Sometimes I have to think about who it's making upset and why it's making them upset, and then determine if that matters or not. If it matters, then I'll walk away from it. If it doesn't matter and it's for the greater good, then that's fine. They can just deal with it.
Have you ever created a piece of content? And I know you, again, I've known you for a long time, but way back in the days of Vine, if people remember that, have you ever created a piece of content that you thought, oh my God, people are going to love this, but it just doesn't land, but you still love it because of maybe that creative process?
Yeah, one of my favorite pieces ever, whenever I get asked to talk about my favorite thing I've ever made, it's Urologist, the movie. And I just thought urology is a very funny profession to have, I think. I mean, it's a very important profession. It's a very important career and field of study. However, I find it very funny. And so I made a sort of film noir, sort of cat in a hot tin roof type feeling thing, a black and white video, me in in like a white undershirt with a glass of whiskey by the window, looking at the window all somber, saying, "That's the dream, son, looking at wieners all day. But you'll just end up at the factory like your old man." "But Daddy, I said it's just a dream." And that was the end of the video. And nobody liked it. I thought it was the funniest thing I've ever done. Nobody liked it except for the Urologist Association of America, who played it at their convention.
Oh, wow. Well,
Yeah.
hey, that's a win.
It's a win. There's lots of jokes there, and I'm not going to make any of them right now. There's lots of jokes there.
Well, I've seen that video. If that makes you feel any better,
That's good.
I've seen it. So I think in that sense, you've reached to the people. So that's a good thing.
Exactly.
I wanted to talk a little bit about this moment of time that we're in right now in Canada, because it strikes me that your content, I think, is even more relevant. You've always been proudly Canadian. You've always had these great videos that have really expressed unique viewpoints that I think sometimes only Canadians can really understand. But now we're at this moment in time where people are, I would say, at least in my lifetime, I'm a little bit younger than you, I do want to add.
Well, I don't know. We'll find out. We'll post in the comments.
Take
your guesses in the comments.
Come on.
No, don't do that.
Oh, you're the worst. That I think people are feeling this immense amount of Canadian pride.
Sure.
How has it changed the way that you're working in 2025 with some of the shows that you're doing, some of the content you're producing?
I mean, a little bit. What's interesting about the switch for me that's happened over the course of the past 10 or so years is that initially Canadian content, especially Canadian comedic content that was about Canada or Canadian things, was always very self-deprecating and always very, look at us silly country bumpkins and we think we're so great, but we're terrible, that type of idea. And that's kind of really switched. And it's much more, certainly in the past year, it's much more switched to being much more a pride thing. It's much more of a Canadian national pride, I guess, where we've realized, we're not that bad. We're pretty good. And in comparison to some other countries, we're doing great. So I think it's changed in that regard. And in the content-wise, for me, it's changed in that it's less about being self-deprecating, about being Canadian, and more being about we're quirky, we're weird, but it's great.
Well, I'm not saying that you won't be hired for an O Canada marketing campaign anytime soon, but saying we're not that bad, we're pretty good.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the most Canadian thing I could say. Not that bad. We're pretty good.
It absolutely is. I would agree with that. What do you think of the political situation in Canada right now? We had a federal election. There was lots of chaos leading up to that election. Now it feels like kind of a little bit of this moment of, I think, calm, at least in Canada. Obviously,
Sure.
The rest of the world is experiencing a lot of chaos. But Prime Minister Carney has kind of brought some calm, I think, into the world.
Yeah, I think he's the right amount of boring, which is good. And I think that he comes in with a pretty established resume, and that's good. I feel that just looking at him, you're like, yeah, this guy's dealt with a lot. And then I think also, as they touched on in his election campaign, going back to being a goalie in hockey, and who wants to be a goalie in hockey? Only the psychotic and the very brave. That's it. And he was a goalie. So I think that also touched a little bit of his personality. He rarely gets put on his back foot. He's calm, he's calculating, he's in all the right ways. And that's good. That's really good. What's fascinating about this time in politics is that I think not everyone, the majority of people were so concerned about the election that they were afraid to criticize anything about anybody. And one of the important things of the democracy, I think, is to hold your leaders and your government to account. You can still love them. You think they're amazing, they're awesome, but that doesn't mean they get a free ride. You still have, that's the whole point of democracy, is that you have to be, questioning decisions, questioning things. Now, why are you doing this? Is this going to benefit us? Who's actually benefiting this? If you do something wrong, we want to know about it. We want to make sure you're pulled back in the line. And it's fascinating to me right now because I think people are still in the fear stage. They're like, listen, man, don't rock the boat again. We don't want to end up in suddenly a snap election. And it's like, we're not going to, though. It's okay. Everything's going to be okay. So it's a fascinating time. I don't know. I think we're going to see some big changes politically in the next 2 to 3 years in Canada. I don't know if that's hopefully for the better, because we're already in the right path, I think. But yeah, that's my hope. I hope for the better. I think there's a Canadian confidence that there hasn't been before, which I like.
You know, just as you were talking about Prime Minister Carney, I was thinking about the fact that I think you're right. You know, many people who I have spoken to, especially as of late, are kind of, you know, reassuring themselves that this is the right choice, right? And kind of hesitant to criticize anything that's done. We don't want to kind of rock the boat. It reminds me of the Doechii song when she says, whoopsie made an oopsie or something like that. You've heard that song, right?
Gosh, you're cool.
I try. I think I might have gotten that backwards, but we are sort of in this early stage, kind of the honeymoon stage, I think, with Prime Minister Carney. And yet I think there are things that are happening right now that, you know, I think we should be paying attention to. What is your hope for Canadians as far as continuing to be as passionate, perhaps, about our democracy as they were pre-election?
I think, you know, what's happening in the USA is a really good way for us to go, oh, okay. So it's a reminder that how good we have it here and how we have the opportunity still here to make it even better. And I think that's one of my favorite things about Canada is that Canada is not a done deal. Canada is not like we just made Canada and that was it. Canada is a work in progress. And Canada, the whole basis of Canada as a country is how can we make things better? What are you doing wrong? How can we fix the things we've done wrong and make them better for everybody? And I like that a lot. My hope, I think, is that the Canadian confidence again continues. And I think that one of the great things about Prime Minister Carney is that he was the kind of guy with a bit of a street credibility, a bit of a strong pedigree, a strong record behind him of successes and strength. And we kind of needed him to come back home and kick us in the pants and say, we can do this. We can be an energy leader. We can be a technology leader. We can have our own industries. We can do all this stuff. We don't have to always wait for someone bigger than us to say they want to try to bring us with them. And I think that, you know, from a content production, which is, you know, where you and I live, content production sense, to me, it's always been an argument of we can make good stuff. We can make world-class content in Canada. We have an amazing quality of life in Canada. Why aren't we making more Canadian content and selling it to the world? Like there's all the content. We should be a content powerhouse for TV shows, films, and internet content as well. And I hope that continues. I hope people realize, yeah, this is a good place to be. There's some minor trade-offs. It maybe doesn't have the glitz of the USA or the glitz of elsewhere, but it's all around better, I think.
Now, I've never said this to someone I've interviewed before, but let's talk about fascism because this is the topic of your book. One of the things that I have experienced firsthand is that I think sometimes people online don't really know what fascism is. Some of them think we're living in it, which is absolutely not true, at least here in Canada, in our part of the world.
Sure.
What is it about this topic that drew you to write about it?
I think, you know, looking at what's happened in various parts in the world where there's just been a general shift to the right, and I'm really not a fan of labeling people by left or right or whatever, because I think that's just nonsense. I think it's just a case of, I think people's beliefs, as you find out, you might think you're in the same group of people and then the person beside you has a totally different view on something you have. And I think there's not a lot of benefit to labeling that. But so saying, for the ease of conversation, I think things have shifted more and more and more to the right, and that usually coincides with some political philosophies that are less in line with progressive governments and more in line with authoritarian governments, where it's going to be my way or the highway. And I think it's important for us as a generation, meaning the people alive currently, to realize that things can get horrible. Like we sort of often look back to this is probably not very uplifting conversation we had. But I mean, I think people look back at 1930s Germany and go, how did that happen? How did that happen? Could never happen now. Could never happen now. And then you kind of look around over the past couple of years and go, well, actually, it probably could happen again. So we should maybe we should maybe brush up on this. We should maybe figure out how we can slow things down or stop things entirely or divert this course that we're on currently. And it sounds initially alarmist. And I think what's been fascinating to me is over the past few years, it's gone from anyone mentioning the sort of parallels between other, eras and countries with authoritarian leadership and fascist leadership. It's gone from sounding alarmist to be sounding like, oh, that actually tracks. That actually makes sense now. And that's terrifying. That's super terrifying. And again, I think we're just a part of a generation of people who have come out of World War II and thinking, well, that's ancient history. That's all done. That'll never happen. It could never happen here. And we've had it pretty cushy, I think, since then. And I think we need to be reminded that democracy and peace and progressive ideas and policies only happen if you work for them. And that's really important. Only happen if you're aware of them potentially being lost and how to stop them from being lost. And it's scary, but I think it's important. I think it's really, really important.
I'm pretty sure that if we just pulled out that past minute and a half or 2 minutes of you talking about the state of the world, someone would think that this was a very serious book and a warning for the future. But I do want to remind people that this is all about lessons from cats. So
yes.
What are some of those lessons without giving away what's in the book?
Well, I'm glad you asked, and I'm happy to share some of the chapters names with you, just to give you an idea. So it starts off with stay nimble and unpredictable. And the idea being to not be where you're expected to be necessarily all the time, to leap from the back of the couch and rappel down the curtains when they expect you to be in the chair. It's about never losing your nap time, which is my favorite chapter, because I think people don't necessarily think about this idea that in relation to the book, fascism relies on overwhelming people. Fascism relies on making you exhausted and making you unable to make decisions and unable to process things properly because there's so much stuff happening all the time, and it can burn you out. And one of the ways you can fight back about that is to decide to turn off and decide to be like, you know what? Nope, I'm not dealing with this right now. I'm going to go lie down for a little bit of nap, recharge, come back and attack this on my own terms as opposed to being exhausted and burnt out. And then things like knocking things over strategically, like deciding how you can be a fly in the ointment, how you can be a spanner in the works and cause, disruption in small, tiny ways that will be impactful, that will help people in general. So there's lots of like weird things that I started writing about cats, thinking, this is really funny. And the more I wrote it, I thought, damn it, I think this is actually relevant. And now I've been jokingly referring to the book as a little book that might just save democracy. And I was told yesterday it will save democracy. So that was nice to hear.
Well, I have to ask, do you have a cat?
We had 2 cats. We have no cats currently. We had Steve and Agnes, and love them dearly. And at some point, once the traveling slows down, I think we might look at another cat or 2.
I don't know why that seems funny to me, but just the way you said it, like you're like 95 years old once the traveling slows down.
So once this pace of life slows down,
you'll consider it. Okay, so just have a few minutes left with you. I wanted to talk a little bit about your family because you don't want to do this?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. Go ahead. It's fine.
I have always been so fascinated with the fact that your kids are in the industry in terms of digital content and influencer type of content, production work, your beautiful wife, and even your mom is an internet celebrity and also TV star. Not many of us made it to that point, but she certainly did. So tell me, what is that like living with people who are probably often looking at moments of things that happen as content opportunities?
We're not too bad. We used to be, I think, in the early days when we kind of had realized that we could make a living in social media content creation. We realized you're kind of mining everything. You're mining every moment. And then after a while, you kind of learn, well, we don't have to do that all the time, which is probably more healthy to not do it all the time. It's not healthy to keep sort of wandering out with your camera going, is this funny? Do that again. But it's been interesting. It's great. We're very fortunate to be able to do it. And I'm super proud. I'm working on a project this fall with both of my sons, right? So with Gregor and Owen, it'll have the three of us working in Abbey Road Studios. So this is like dad dream stuff for me. This is really super cool. And Shannon just puts up with it. So it's fun.
Well, I'm also working on a project with one of your sons. So I feel
That's
like,
right.
I feel like, we're all family here, right? All kind
Exactly.
of helping each other throughout this process. I wanted to ask you, because this is a topic we're going to cover on a future show this summer. We're going to talk about the state of podcasting in Canada and content. So you mentioned that we have a huge opportunity in Canada right now for Canadian content. At the same time, I will say, as someone who creates a weekly show that is on SiriusXM, but also a podcast, it is really hard for Canadians to compete with the incredible amount of high quality or potentially enraged content coming from the US. So how do we stand out and kind of do our own thing? Because there's a lot of competition in terms of the spaces that I think both of us play in.
I think there's sometimes a tendency to sort of do something that makes the content seem more American. And I'm really not a fan of that. I can see it makes sense sometimes. But I think there's a quality and there's a style to Canadian content that is there innately that makes us stand out. I think you're totally right. I'm a huge believer in we have to protect Canadian content, not because it's any lesser than, not because it's not as good as, but rather because there's a huge machine just south of us that is constantly bombarding people with messaging saying, watch this, listen to this, watch this, listen to this. And they have way more resources just because it's a numbers game. It's just because they have 10 times the amount of potential people. That said, I go back to making Canada a content powerhouse. I think that idea of, we're not selling to 40 million people. We're selling to 8 billion people. This doesn't matter. A good story is a good story. Good content is good content. The fact that it might be Canadian, ideally, is incidental. And there's a number of shows that do that really well. I know there was a show called Children Ruin Everything, which is one of my favorite shows it was on. And really great family sitcom. But they would incidentally reference Canadian cities and stuff. Well, we have to go to Kitchener. We have to go to Toronto. And they would just mention it in passing. And it wouldn't be part of the story. It wouldn't play into the joke wouldn't be about that. It would just be like the same way an American show might say, I'm going to, Cincinnati or something. And I think that's important for us to realize is that we don't have to de-Canadianize what we're doing. But we do have to invest in ourselves. We do have to protect ourselves. And I think one of my pipe dream goals is, or pie in the sky, not really pipe dream goal yet. Pie in the sky goals is to create a soundstage. It's like, we should be making amazing content here. There's zero reason we're not making shows and soap operas and all that kind of stuff in Canada, because we have almost a population of the UK who has a thriving industry. Let's copy what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And I should say you are the second most famous podcaster in Stratford, Ontario.
Are you counting Mansbridge?
How did you know?
Listen, if I see him at the dump again or Canadian Tire, maybe I'll take that as a legitimate threat. Until I see him back there, forget it.
Well, he's taking a break over the summer, so this is your chance to shine.
That's true. I got to outpace him now.
All right. So that leads us back into the book. And every time I say the name of the book, I have to read off a piece of paper, but I'm going to get it right eventually. Lessons from Cats for Surviving Fascism. There you go. Again, it is now available. We are super excited that as of this week, when people are watching this or listening to this, they will have a chance to go buy the book. Where can they get it?
Get it at your favorite bookstore. You can go online if you want to. If you're not averse to doing that kind of stuff, then you can buy it online. But your favorite bookstore will have it. It's super fun. I get to launch it. The launch, of course, being at Hatchard's Bookshop in London, England, which is the oldest bookstore in the UK. And just anywhere. Go in and just demand it, and they'll get it.
Very, very cool. Make sure you do buy the book. And if I can just say, one of the best things you can do to support Canadian content and creators in this country is to like their stuff, buy their stuff, comment on their stuff, and support each other. And I've been super excited to be able to do that alongside you over so many years now. Stewart Reynolds, it's hard for me to actually say your name because you'll always be Brittlestar to me. But thank you so much for joining me on the show, and say hi to your beautiful family.
I will do. Thanks, Amber.